Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, let
Oh,
me move.
there's my alarm going off to remind me.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I can hear you. You froze there for a second. There you.
Okay. I think
Are we good?
it should be good.
I think we're good.
Okay, wonderful.
Can
I
you
was
hear me
working.
now? Perfect. Hey, thanks for joining me on this. I've been having a blast doing these podcasts with some of my favorite business people, referral partners, business owners, etc. And I appreciate you being willing to take some time and join us this morning. That, so anyway, welcome.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out and
Absolutely.
podcasting is the way to go. And so I actually have to say I think this is my first podcast ever. So
Really?
yeah,
I feel very honored that you were able to join us for this because I have no idea what I'm doing. So I figure
you always do great.
I push the record button and we'll kind of see what happens here. The goal here to try to keep it within 30 minutes. So I mean, as busy as you are, I don't want to monopolize your time, but I do want to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you do it for, talk about the industry a little bit. You are absolutely one of my favorite insurance agents. You're always there for me and for my clients. So when there's a need, as random as the questions come, like my question yesterday about polypropylene pipes and
Yeah,
all of that, and you did a great job of doing some research on that. So let me step back a little bit. If you'll kind of introduce yourself and tell us what you are or what you do, who you are, who you do it for, and we'll start from there.
absolutely. I am Jazmyn Miller. I am a local insurance agent based out of Scottsdale, Arizona, but I work all over the valley and I am with Comperion Insurance. So we don't call ourselves a broker, even though a lot of people think that because we have multiple companies that we utilize. But the reason we don't use the broker title is because we don't charge a fee. And a lot of people actually are
Oh,
unaware that insurance agents can charge a fee in some settings. We do not, and actually cannot based off our setups. But yeah,
ah,
that's a whole nother conversation piece. However, when people hear broker, they automatically think multiple, companies, and that is something that I do have at my fingertips. I do have over 17 years of experience in the industry because I started when I was two.
clearly.
So yes, I've been doing this a while.
17 years. Has it really been that long? That's amazing.
Isn't that crazy? I'm not
It
gonna
is
lie, I
crazy.
add it up sometimes. I'm like, this can't be the real number.
Well, I've been doing mine for 34 years, and other than watching my hairline go from, here all the way back, that's the only way I can count the years, like the rings on a tree. Um,
Mine just color a lot more grays. That's all I have to say.
only our barber and our hairstylist know for sure, right?
Yeah.
Exactly right. So you and I met, how long has it been now? 5, 6 years ago?
Did you say 6 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
I feel like it might even be 7 or 8 years ago, to be
Really?
honest. Yeah, because I know for sure it was pre-COVID when I feel like the last 5 years are just
Right.
kind of a blur. Even
Hmm.
it's crazy to think 2020 was 5 years ago. It really is. But I want to say, yeah, it may even be about 7 years,
Wow.
give or take. So yes, a few
Okay.
years.
Yeah. I remember I was working for Academy Mortgage at the time. You
Hmm.
and I met for coffee, was super impressed with your knowledge of the industry, the way you take care of your clients, the personal attention that you give to that, and then watching your career grow over the last few years to being one of the top insurance agents in the state. I think it's just been phenomenal. Tell me what your philosophy is.
My philosophy, and actually, before I go to that, can I actually compliment you as well, if you don't
Sure.
mind? Because
Always. I'm not going to slow you down.
I want to go back to that. So when you and I met, I appreciate this because I feel like there's a lot of people, and I'm not speaking directly in the mortgage or insurance industry, but they meet somebody real quick for coffee or lunch or whatever, and then they're just like, "Oh yeah, I'll refer you business." And I appreciate the fact that you didn't do that right out the gates, and I mean that very complimentary. Like, so whoever's listening to this, you only align yourself with people that you feel comfortable with, you can trust and you ask me a series of questions as kind of a vetting process for your
Mhm.
clients. And I
Right.
appreciate that because if you're going to put your name on as a stamp of approval, for your clients, they can't just be anybody that's just kind of flying by the seat of their pants. So I do want to
Well,
compliment you because we've all experienced that, and there's good, bad, and different in every industry. But I do want to compliment you and say,
Well,
when I sat down, I knew it wasn't, I had to earn your business as far as showing you, what I can do. And then also the follow through with the clients as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I felt like we made a great connection. That, as I recall, and yeah, maybe correct me, I'm thinking it was a Dutch Bros up on Scottsdale Road up in the Greyhawk areas where I kind of remember us sitting down and me trying to figure out, oh man, here we go, another insurance agent. That's fine. I wasn't super happy with the person I've been referring some business to on the service level. And so I think timing worked out great. Again, you answered my questions. I want my clients to have the smoothest mortgage process possible. So if I can align my clients with people that I know I can trust, that are going to stay on track, keep the process going smoothly down, not create waves when there shouldn't be any,
Mhm.
help to put fires out when they do arise in the smoothest way possible. Because buying a home is such an emotional transaction that if we can keep things calm, if we can control things as much as possible. And one of the things I really appreciated about the way you and your team handle it is I have a rule with regard to the effective date of homeowners insurance. And most loan officers rely on their processor to kind of coordinate homeowners insurance, talk to the agent, whoever the borrower picks, and they just kind of sit back very passively. And most of the realtors, oh, like your cat there, which kitty cat is that?
That's Felicia. I'm sorry. I was trying to
Felicia.
get her out.
No, that's all right. But what we find oftentimes is we get to the very end of the process and the borrower has told the insurance agent when the close of escrow date is. And that's when the effective date is set for. And then we'll get a phone call from the realtor because we look to close loans very quickly saying, hey, if we're ready to close, could we close a few days sooner? That would be a benefit to the buyer, maybe a benefit to the seller. And we're always anxious to say, yeah, that'd be great, only to
Right.
find out that the insurance agent that the borrower chose to work with has now like, well, the insurance isn't effective until the close of escrow date. Now we got to back up and we got to do all this, and then becomes a whole rigmarole. So
Yeah.
you were very open to the fact that our standard operating procedure is have the effective date scheduled for a week prior to the close of escrow, so that if we do want to close it a little sooner, it's not an issue. And I've appreciated you being flexible with us for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because we don't need to complicate it more than it needs to be, right? I mean, we still have obviously our procedures, but as far as I've heard a lot of times when clients deal with like an 800 number, and we've all had our own experiences with just 800 numbers in general, not even
Mhm.
insurance directly. And it just takes everything 5 extra steps that are unnecessary. So, and I always appreciate that you really do the best to alleviate any surprises in the processes with your
Mhm.
clients. And, you make it an easy transaction. So also my team knows too, when, Chris calls, we got to jump on this because you don't call often, and that's not a good or bad or indifferent. It's just,
Yeah.
when you call, you need something. So let's get on it and keep it moving forward. So,
I appreciate that. I had a regional manager tell me one time, he goes, you are the lowest maintenance loan officer we have. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that as a compliment. Is, but I also know that when I get a call from you, you've exhausted all of the options, and now we need to jump on it because I can trust that you've already, yeah, you're going to answer all the questions I would have asked. So let's make it happen. So I appreciate that. I don't want to be a pain to any of the people that I work with. And after doing this for as long as I have, you've pretty much seen almost everything. Now, I called you yesterday and said, hey, I've got a client that we found out that the home has polybutylene piping in it based on the home inspection that was done. And another lender for this buyer turned the transaction down, saying he couldn't get the loan financed. And I've done polypropylene piping was something that plumbers started using in the 80s and 90s, only to find out later into the 2000s and 2010s that type of piping has gotten very brittle. And because of our slab construction, it not tends to, once in a while will fail. And it becomes, of course, now we have a water issue, we've got a plumbing issue, we've got, water damage, etc. I've never had a problem getting those loans financed. And so when I called you and said, hey, is this potentially an insurance issue? And you did some really quick research for us, got back to me, and we'll be turning the client over to you to make sure that, when we get the loan done for this client, they get a great job, a great deal on the insurance as well. But you jumping in to answer a question quickly was really helpful for me, and I know I can always count on you for that. And appreciate you
Well,
being
I think
responsive.
the bill for it too, if I can say just a quick insurance tip for that, and obviously not at you, but just for anyone watching. Nowadays, with the insurance industry like it is, you really want to make sure that a home is durable. And I know that sounds silly, but if, people, if you're purchasing a home with an extremely old roof or AC unit or things like that, that's where having a strong, real estate agent and lender on your side is huge because of the fact that a lot of insurance companies, if we know there's going to be an issue with the underwriting piece of it, they won't even take on the risk. And I'm all for like the older homes. I love the historic homes, things like that. They have a different look than our cookie cutters that we see nowadays, which I love the cookie cutters as well. But just making sure that that's not a surprise or just thinking, oh, the insurance is going to be very inexpensive because it's older. And that's not how it works out. So
Got it.
we want to eliminate surprises on the insurance side as well.
Well, and just Larry, on top of that, when I get somebody pre-qualified for a loan, I throw an estimate on the application to give them a rough idea of what homeowners insurance is going to cost. And the cost of homeowners insurance has been going up over time because of the natural disasters. You're seeing all of the issues. So that certainly makes sense. So I've had to increase the estimate that I put on the pre-qualification form to give them a better idea of kind of what to expect with that. So then when the contract comes in, and I sit down with the client and go over the details of the contract, we kind of explain what's going to happen next. I always tell them that I'm going to have somebody I trust give them a call to talk about homeowners insurance. I want you to have your insurance figured out in the next 48 hours. Now, maybe it's a 30-day escrow, but we need to know early. Number one, is it insurable? Is there an issue with the home that could cause the premium to be excessively high? I had a client recently that I think you guys are helping out that ended up having flood insurance. So we really didn't expect to have flood insurance on a townhome in a townhome complex. And that kind of threw us for a loop that it actually is in a flood zone. You guys jumped right on it, got them a super inexpensive flood insurance policy based on how it was set up. So better to know early in the process than hey, we're literally closing that transaction today for him, versus late in the transaction and find out now we have flood insurance and that can affect the debt to income ratio because that payment's going to get added onto it. And now we have a super stressed out buyer. No. Let's figure it out early in the transaction. And that way everybody has a better idea. And if it's going to be a problem and the buyer wants to bail on buying that house, better we do it sooner than later. So,
Right.
One of my big sayings has been if you control the things that you can control, then you've got time to manage the things that you can't. And one of those things that I tell the buyers we want to control early is homeowners insurance, the underwriting we do in advance of even an offer going out. So if we can control all of those, man, we can make this process go so much smoother, be so much less anxious. And we pride ourselves on being able to close loans in 10 days. And I had a client tell me the other day, why would I want to close in 10 days? So, well, how long do you want to be stressed out for? Time tends to kill deals. If we can close in 10 days, that's going to put you in a better position to negotiate with the seller because the seller's thinking, I'm going to have cash in my hand in 10 days. Maybe they want to lease the property back for 30 days because they haven't found their next house. It puts you in the driver's seat to do everything,
Right.
get better terms. And in the buyer's market that we're in now, I mean, we got sellers paying for closing costs, buying interest rates down, staying in a property for 45 days after closing so that, they can get into their new home. And the sellers are like, hey, I'll get some of my cash back by renting the property back for a month and a half or so. So, again, we control the things that we can. Tell us a story. I've added this to my podcast recently. Tell us a story that started out as kind of a crazy story and how you were able to kind of either get something back on track or that kind of gives us a heads up on what we might want to be looking out for when we talk to an insurance agent about getting our home financed.
That's a really good question. I've had just a few stories over the years, but the biggest thing I would say, if I could just make it a little bit more general, because to like think of one, knock on wood, I haven't had any crazy stories recently, and if I did, it would probably be like too good if somebody watched it, it'd be like, wait a second, that might be me. On the other side, when it comes to insurance, and just like the piece that a lot of people forget is and specifically, a home auto, I do all that, but on homeowners insurance is people forget, like, okay, if something happens, who do I call? Who's going to hold my hand through that? And then
Right.
we have to put all that together. So I guess I can tell this has been a few years ago, but I had a client that a car, not her car, because that makes a difference, but some random car ran into her house, so of course, like in the middle of the night. I'm sure no liquid courage or anything was involved.
Oh, certainly not.
It was all legitimate, not really. But anyways, so meaning the client gave me a call and I want to say it was like 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I do truly mean it. You can call me in the middle of the night, but your house better be on fire or somebody better just run into it. Please do not call me if you just got like a random piece of paper in the mail. We're not talking about that anymore. Call me during business hours. I got you. On the other side, we don't deal with homeowners insurance claims all the time. And what I find in my world, Chris, is the clients will call and they'll say like, oh, I don't think it's a big deal, but they have like, 4 feet of water flowing through their home because the pipe was broke. I'm like, that is a big deal. And then on the other side, I have people that think it's a huge deal, and then it's like two shingles flew off the roof, during
Right.
a windstorm. And so, but that's my job to go through and say, let's see if this is worth filing a claim. Let's see if it's not, because big picture is you don't want to file small claims, because in the home, and people will say, well, isn't that what insurance is for? No, insurance is for the catastrophic things that you
Right.
financially cannot pay for, and you have to figure out everybody's different. Some people that might be 2,000, people that might be 10,000. And I'm not saying you always have to just go for that, but you have to figure out your own personal amount. And
Right.
that's where having a local advisors to go through. Now, legally, we can never say you cannot file a claim, and I would never tell a client that. On the other side, just some guidance, like, hey, maybe calling a man or a roofer, whatever their situation is. Obviously, with the person with the car in their living room, a little bit of a different situation. And so just hand holding through that, because it isn't so, you shouldn't be a pro at filing claims, first and foremost.
Right.
If so, that's a lot of red flags. On the other side, just having somebody that you can call on, because claims don't happen Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. They happen after hours. And I've taken the calls on Saturdays, Sundays, after hour in the middle of the night to just say, are you okay? Let's get you into the next step, or, let's think about this. And I walk them through that. So sorry for the long explanation, but I wanted to make these
No,
points.
I appreciate. I think you make a great point. I heard kind of a quasi horror story from a client recently who called the toll free number to kind of ask questions. They had one of our big windstorms over the last couple of weeks. So these were personal friends of mine, and they called their insurance company, a toll free number, because they had a couple of shingles fly off and crack. And they're like, first call, we'll call the insurance company. Let's find out, what our options are here. Just by calling the insurance company, their premium went. They didn't even execute. They realized the cost was going to be less than $1,000. They're like, hey, we'll get a roofer up there. We'll get things repaired. But just because they made the phone call, it triggered in here that there's an issue with the property. And then they got a call from their agent saying, why didn't you call me first? Like, don't call the toll-free number, call the personal relationship, which is why you want to have a personal relationship with an agent, right? The same way you want to have a personal relationship with your lender. Having a personal relationship with an insurance agent becomes absolutely critical to make sure that you don't step in something that you didn't mean to step in.
Yeah,
You're going to give them the
exactly.
best advice. And early on, you're talking about, hey, what kind of a deductible are you guys going to be comfortable with? We go high deductible, your price is going to be lower, but you're putting more on yourself. Or do we got to go with a lower deductible because, cash is tight, but understand how it's going to affect you later on. So, having those conversations with a professional like you become absolutely critical for people to understand that, no, it's not just what insurance is for. It's for catastrophic, right?
Yeah,
To your point. So,
yeah.
no, I appreciate that. Very cool.
Absolutely. Well, and all insurance isn't created equal. And I know a lot of people, especially in the market, after they've been in their home for 2 or 3 years, and then they start looking at reviewing their insurance policies. So a lot of times we are attracted to pricing online, but when your home is one of your biggest investments, or possibly your biggest investment,
Right.
you don't want to protect that by something small and just a call center. And it's important, and I applaud you for this too, Chris. People know who their insurance is. A lot of times, if people just go through the big box banks and get their mortgage, which we don't do if you're listening to this. And I Chris could have a whole podcast for days about why not to do that. But a lot of times people don't even know who their insurance is. And I'm like, so if a tree fell on your house and legitimately you needed to file a claim, who are you calling? Where would you even start? You know,
Right.
and people, and what's your deductible? And so people don't think about that, unfortunately, until something, you know, nothing's wrong until something's wrong. And that's exactly what happened.
No, that insurance is one of those, it's like you hate that you have to pay for it. And being a homeowner, you only have to have homeowners insurance if you have a mortgage. From the have to, right? So if you're going to borrow money, the homeowners insurance, because the home is our collateral, we're going to require that homeowners insurance be, secured on the property. Now, if you've paid the home off and it's free and clear, do you have to have homeowners insurance? What options, if somebody calls you and their home's free and clear, tell me what that conversation from your end kind of sounds like.
So I'm so glad you went in that direction. So, you know, there's the obvious of you still have a home to protect. Yeah.
Right.
Now, obviously, if nobody's enforcing it, you can pretty much do whatever you want. The one layer that people often forget, and it can be crucial, and I luckily don't see claims on it often, but it's there to protect you big time, is the liability.
Mm,
So even if you own the home free and clear, what about that liability? And you know, a lot of times people go, "Well, I don't have anyone that visits, or I don't have anybody that comes over." Well, what if it's the mail carrier? We all love Amazon. I love Amazon. Or pick a name, FedEx, UPS, whatever. They're all
right.
coming and going. And what if they trip over a crack that somehow ends up being negligent on your part and you're the owner? I will tell you, they will come after you. But even let's take away the big companies. What if you have a dog? What if you have a cat like Felicia Keys that just walked by? And there can be exclusions, so you got to look into that kind of stuff, especially depending on breed, and that's a whole other segment. But the liability portion is huge. If you have a swimming pool, a trampoline, people get hurt on that. And I need to say it, it's not just kids, it's adults, okay?
Maybe more so.
Yes, you know, because I can do what I want. I make my own rules, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're like jumping from the roof into the swimming pool, and it just doesn't always end well. So, again, making that's like the level of liability, and for a lot of people, they just think like, oh, 100,000 is enough. That's the minimum that's usually included with most carriers. That is not enough because, and you can help on this, Chris. Just thinking about the equity in the home, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully, I mean, over time, we all want to build equity, and I think it naturally, in most cases, happens, right? That's something, that level of protection, your liability, so that they can't put liens, meaning the attorneys, you know, it can get, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm not trying to speak like one, but again, I want to box that in tight so that, you know, you have the coverage. Because if my thought in any insurance, whether it's auto or homeowners insurance, if you're already paying for it, pay for it at the right level. Don't just pay for something and then at the end of the day you're like, what have I really been paying for? And that's not a good feeling. You know, we want to be your worst situation. You're so much fun. Let's try to quote that correctly. We want to be your best situation on your worst day. We don't want it to be the worst, you know,
Uh-huh.
and if you didn't check the box because you didn't get extra coverage, that can be huge. So I would say that would be one of the biggest things is making sure that you still have that liability protection, but also your home, going back to, is your biggest asset. And especially if it's paid off, I mean, that's tons of exposure. Why would you want to risk it? You know, I think
Right.
that's even more of a reason to have coverage.
No, that's a great point. And even a better reason why you want to have a personal relationship with your insurance agent. I love when I hear people have paid off their house, they're so proud of that, which I love because we all would love to get to that point where there's, especially going into retirement, house is free and clear. All you're worried about is taxes and homeowners insurance and maybe HOA dues if you have them. What a nice break but why put that at risk? You've worked so hard for the years to get the house paid. It's probably your biggest asset, and you don't even realize the level of risk you're assuming by
Mhm.
not having it insured correctly. So that's awesome. Great advice.
Well, I'll share just a quick clip. I'll change the story a little bit, but you know, one thing that people forget is like, oh, well, let's pretend I have Chris over to our house. We're having, I don't know, a Christmas party, whatever. And Chris walks in and he doesn't realize that I have a sunk in living room, which they do still exist, or maybe I have a step or whatever, right? You know, and so Chris falls face first into my glass coffee table. Okay. And then all of a sudden, Chris, you know, has to have some stitches. maybe some dental work, I mean, things, he's
Sure.
okay, but he has to go to ER, get some stitches. And then they'll go, well, Chris would never sue me, right? Yes, I'm sure he's health insurance. But one, nobody asks that when you walk in the door, not even an insurance agent. Two, what's the first question they ask when you go to the doctor? What happened?
Right.
Where did it happen? And so a lot of insurance companies, so even if Chris has ABC insurance for his health insurance and he files to him and all that, and then they go, okay, this happened at Jazmyn's house. It was her liability because maybe I had a rug that he slipped on, and they start to look into that. And that's actually where my homeowner's insurance can save me. Again, assuming there wasn't like, they would have to show negligence on my part, but there could be pieces. Again, why not have that extra level of protection? Because people will say, well, my friends or family would never sue me. Well, we would hope not, right? I think if the medical bills get high enough, they could, but
Right.
but yeah, so people don't think about those small little innocent situations can turn into bigger pieces. So
Right. Now, it was some of the little things that you're protecting yourself from. We can certainly, keep ourselves awake at night thinking about all the what ifs and all of that. And yet having a simple conversation with a professional that you trust, who knows that they're not in it just for the commission. Listen, we're looking for a long-term relationship. Let's talk about bundling. Where can I save you the most money? Where can we help you save money over time? And, whether it's by, shopping around, like you've got the ability to do that, as a not a broker, whatever, however that works in your world. But as opposed to being kind of handcuffed, tied to one company, I think it's very similar. People ask me, I just had a client a couple of days ago say, well, what's the difference between working with you as a mortgage broker and me just going to my bank? And so I went into the detail that not only is the bank not going to sit down with you and do what I do, which I've always done, even when I worked at Wells and Chase way back in the day, I always did a mortgage planning session with every client because that's just how I do business. Most of the time, you're not going to get that. But then my job when I worked at Wells and Chase and some other companies was the only product I had to offer, the only interest rate I could offer you was whatever the bank decided the rate was going to be that day. And if I knew that the bank down the street or a mortgage broker could go shopping, I had to hope that you didn't make that call. Well, now I get to provide all this great service up front and go shopping to see who's got the best product, who's got the best interest rate, the best price for what you qualify for, and then basically affect that process to make sure it goes as smoothly as possible. So I think you, like me, feel like we're sitting in the catbird seat here, right? We have the best of both worlds for our clients as long as they understand what the value is. And that's our responsibility to explain our value.
yeah. And I think for both of us too, just having as many tools in our toolbox, especially in today's world, we all need that. And clients don't realize how much they need. But I will say when I get the big box bank mortgage, if clients go that route, not yours ever, obviously, but if I get the call and they're like, hey, Jazmyn, the client's been with me for however 10 years and we're buying a new home. And then it's this really clunky, terrible process. It gets delayed, it gets this, and where I will always compliment you. Literally, I've never seen or had, a situation where it's like, oh, the home fell through, because you keep the mortgage planning process and all of that so tight that there's no surprises. If anything, it's a positive surprise. Hey, we got clear to close early, all is positive. It's all a very good experience. And so if people are like, oh, but I've been with Bank of America or Chase or whatever, banking wise for years, they need to talk to you first. And honestly, you're going to sell them on it. So you'll do great.
Well, thank you. That's well, I think you and I have made a really good pair for a long time with regard to how we take care of our clients, the expectations that we set, the confidence that we give to the client that their needs are going to be satisfied. They're going to get a great price on the service that we provide, that we're not transactional, right? We're here for them, you especially when the disaster happens, they've got your cell phone number, they got your number to call and say, hey, Jazmyn, a car just ran into my house, or whatever the issue is, or a tree limb just fell down, on the corner of the house and busted it up. What do we do next? And so you can walk them through that. And on the mortgage side, we're there long term as well, not just transaction. I think that's why I've been around and doing this as long as I have. Is we're always here to take care of our clients long term and make sure that they know that we're managing their debt. You're making sure you're managing their liability, their risks, and that they've surrounded themselves with a really good team. So this has been awesome. As we wrap it up here, we're This is perfect timing. Tell us the best way to reach you, and I'm going to make sure that we, put it along the bottom of the screen here when we actually get this edited. But tell us what the best way to find you.
Wonderful. Yeah. So the best way is honestly my cell phone, which I'm sure you'll share the number at the end. And my cell phone, you can text or call me. I mean, truly, it is my cell phone right here that, everybody in my family has. And then, some people do prefer email, or you can always do social media as well. But texting or calling is the easiest.
Okay.
And if somebody's looking to shop around their insurance just in general, I have a quick link that I just text over to you. Takes you all 30 seconds to complete. Send me all of your insurance
Wow.
information so I can evaluate it.
That's a great idea. So if I've got clients I'm doing refinances for, they have an insurance agent already that, it's not you. And I'm like, listen, why don't we get maybe a second opinion on the insurance that you've got? And especially, whenever I see the insurance information come in and it's one of the online companies, and it's like, man, do you have a relationship with somebody locally? And too often they say, no, I called the toll-free number. I found a site online. Like, listen, I'm going to make sure that somebody I trust reaches out to you. And that's when I reach out to you and say, listen, these guys, we're doing a refinance for them. We're trying to save them as much money as possible, obviously. But just as importantly, are their risks being managed? Like, did the insurance company ask all of the right questions? Do we know they've got teenagers soon that are going to be driving? Do we have other properties that we need to insure? Can we bundle and save some money as opposed to just filling in, something online for some of these, big box or online insurance companies? So really appreciate what you do for us.
Because you're doing a service to them to help them get, usually a bigger home or bigger, better in their situation. That's where I have to make sure that the liability and protection runs parallel. You would be shocked how many times I talk to people who are very well off. I can see it by their home. I don't need to see their finances. I can see the size of their house. You don't get there, by just waking up and deciding that. They've made a lot of right decisions. And then I look at their other liability coverage, whether it's on their cars or home, which shockingly bleeds together, and I can share that on a phone call. And a lot of times they don't have the proper coverage. I'm like, one car accident could take out all of this.
Right.
And that's what a good insurance advisor does. So again, there's lots of great in every field that we're in, but I want to just make sure if your agent hasn't said, we need to look at this, then maybe it's time to evaluate and shop your insurance agent as well.
No, I love that. Well, thank you so much again for making the time to join us on this, and we'll make sure that all of your contact information, is provided at the bottom. But it's been a pleasure, and look, I know I'm going to see you here soon as well. So appreciate everything that you do for our clients, Jazmyn. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Chris. Have a wonderful day.
You got it. All righty. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.